Good evening, everyone. My name is Malgosia Green. I'm super excited to be here tonight. And I have been working in the higher education edtech space for pretty much my entire career, actually before 2007. It's kind of crazy. My first foray into the space was as the first account manager at a company called Desire to Learn. Way back in the day when the company literally piled onto a bus and drove from Kitchener all the way to Madison, Wisconsin for the first user conference. After that, I was co-founder and CEO of a company called LearnHub, which grew to be the largest education site in India. And today, I'm the Chief Product Officer at Top Hat. So what that means is that tonight, I'll be talking to you about edtech. So I would like to convince you tonight that the traditional textbook needs to die. Think about it. Over the last 200 years, universities have been hotbeds of technological innovation. And yet their classrooms and the textbook used in those classrooms has hardly changed at all. The way that these textbooks have been created and conceived is really out of date. Most textbooks used, especially in first-year introductory courses, are updated every 5 to 6 years. So that means by the time you get it as a student, it's pretty much out of date and it's stale. And these books aren't interactive and they aren't engaging and they cost a fortune. To illustrate the point, I actually brought a book with me that I used in my 4th-year course called Computer Architecture, A Quantitative Approach. It was published in the year 1990, and I really took this course much later than that. I'm not quite that old yet. And it's really crazy to think that I've lugged this book around with me pretty much from every home that I've had, even though it's out of date and has nothing to do with the job that I do today. So there's really no good reason that students need to use outdated books. The textbook publisher model is completely out of date. You only need to look at Pearson's latest earnings report to see that. And so every other large publishing industry, whether it be music or television or newspapers, has been completely disrupted by the internet, except this industry. But that's really changing. Another reason we need to rethink our attachment to the traditional textbook is that the cost. Oh, I forgot to advance my slide. Oh, there. The cost of these books has risen incredibly over the last several years. Since 1998, it's risen by 90%. And that's because it's the professor and not the student that makes the decision what book to use. And so they're quite insulated from traditional market forces. So students don't want to be paying hundreds of dollars for textbooks. And so they're downloading them illegally, sharing, renting, or not buying them at all. And so the publishers are trying to change their model to keep up with this. But they're failing, and they will continue to fail, partly because they're wedded to this traditional hunk of dead tree, and partly because the digital rights publishing model that they are using for their digital offerings is completely broken. Professors want to be able to enhance the books they use and customize them and add more relevant information so that they're not stale objects. And they need to deliver this content in an easy and engaging way. So one would think that this industry would have been disrupted by user-generated content a long time ago, just like Wikipedia disrupted encyclopedia. But that hasn't happened. Some people have tried to make inroads into the space. There's something called Open Education Resources that is funded by the likes of the Gates Foundation and others, but they've only gotten about 5% market share, and they're not really succeeding as much as one would think. And why is that? And so one reason is that the business doesn't create, that model doesn't create high enough quality content. But there's something else that's really missing, and that something is that professors who create this content and update this content need fair payment for the work that they're putting into creating this content. And they really need royalties for the continued effort to make it relevant and fresh. And that's missing from these other options. We need a viable marketplace built upon a community of the creators, the adopters, the reviewers, and the collaborators to really fostering an ongoing dialogue between all these groups, and that will foster accelerated improvements in quality. So the traditional textbook publisher is in jeopardy. I hope I've convinced you tonight that it's on its way out the door, and it's dying a rather slow but accelerated death. It's destined to be replaced by user-generated content. And that will not only radically increase the amount of content available, but if done correctly, it will also improve the quality of that content. And so everybody will win. The students will save money, professors will be empowered, and the textbook publisher will be removed from the equation. Thank you.
Questions?
Oh, questions. Okay, questions. I forgot about that.
I'll start then. So how do you get distribution? Like, imagine the traditional book retailers or distributors have good relationships with the schools. So how do you disrupt that relationship?
Well, so ultimately, the professor makes the decision for which book to use in class. So you need to go directly to the professor and work with them on a one-on-one basis. So yes, there is the campus bookstore, but you really need to get to the end decision maker, which is the professor, and so work with them.
Hi, I'm not sure if I understood. Oh, am I going first? I'm not sure I understood. So this user-generated content would come from professional authors, the ones that write the books right now?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
So the user-generated content would come from professional authors that write the textbooks right now?
Yeah, so right now, it's the professors that are actually writing the books, working with the publishers. But the entire model of how that book is put together, it's an extremely onerous, tedious, long-winded process that takes years. And then they only update it once in a little while. So the professors will continue to write the content, but if you create a platform, like a marketplace type platform, you will be able to accelerate the development of that content and keep it relevant and fresh on an ongoing basis.
Okay, one more question back here.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Martin here in the back. Actually, this model is really great. Looking back in history, Gutenberg had the last big really change of how we perceive information. And making things digital, especially concerning books, has one big advantage. You can also make them accessible for everybody, and accessibility is a big issue. How do you ensure that the content generated in your with your methods is accessible for everybody?
Well, when we develop the content, our entire platform is compliant with the US and Canadian standards for accessibility. So that makes sure is that your question? Yeah, okay, yeah. So the platform itself is fully accessible to people with basically most disabilities, so it's compliant with all the legal regulations. So it makes it really much more accessible because not all the books are, in like Braille format and so forth.
Thank you.